Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is, I believe it's Wednesday. It's November 10th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And what looked like was going to start out as a range day, you can see the blue up here early on. We were really in this range, but when we found this resistance up here, it was off to the races to the downside. And so really you didn't need this. I mean, it might have helped because we did come back and test this before we went lower. But really, I believe you're better off to play the yellow channel earlier and then the blue channel after that. There's really two separate channels, and there's, let me just color this one so there's really three, because I believe this larger channel, the gray one, is just a larger I believe these are smaller trends within that. Um, I don't think you really need that channel though. I think you were better off if you played the yellow one and then played the blue one. And that gave you the best option of reading this thing, in my opinion. So anyway, I'm going to zoom in here, and we'll go through these trades, and we're going to wrap it up. I'm a little late getting this done today, so you'll just have to bear with me. But we're going to move through these a little quickly today, probably quicker than I'd like. But there's not a lot of trades, so it shouldn't take too long. But right in here, just you're probably better off to stay out of this stuff. You just get chopped up in this stuff right here. The only thing I saw was a short up here at the end, and we'll go over that here in a minute. Um, but let's start over here around 7 o'clock. So 7 a.m. came just as we're making this new high here, and we're in this downtrend, and you can clearly see a first entry and then a second entry. Of course, that signal bar is not good enough. It's inside, but and this one's it's just way too big. Um, I mean, I marked it. It's a second entry because I wanted to talk about it, but I just think that signal bar, this is right at, I believe there was some news that came out right in there, or right before some news came out. That's right at the news, so that's what that big bar is. So you're probably better off stay out of that. That's the CPI news, and you can see that bar's 30 ticks. So just stay out of that. I marked it just so I wouldn't forget to talk about it, but we've kind of settled down by the time we get down here. Um, I noted this as a lower high, but again, it's just not a very good setup. It's right at the lows, so I shouldn't even probably mark that one. I just don't like it. Um, there's a failure right here, and you might have taken. I think I meant to put that green arrow right here on this failure, but it's right at support. Although we did push through and made a lower low there, so you may trade that failure. That's where I should have had that green. We'll put it back because that's where it should have been. And take note of this. The failure occurred when it broke below this bar, but your stop has to go above that bar. And I always point the stop at the signal bar. So make sure you understand that. And of course, if you just wait, generally you'll get a better setup. And a few minutes later, you get a first entry, second entry, and look how bearish that bar is. That's a pretty good setup. It is a little congested there, but that's like a little failed breakout, and it is a second entry. It is a downtrend. Um, I like that one. And it was a fairly quick scalp, and then it continued to go lower, but you probably would have got your break-even runner before it did. And no entries here. And then finally we make a higher high, higher low, and then we get a second entry here and that confirms that trend line pretty much. I like that one. And that's a pretty good move. You would have got a runner on that one. Unfortunately, you don't get another chance on this. We just keep chopping higher, and you just don't really get you could have looked at this as a double bottom, and then this is a failure, but you're not back to the EMA. It's just not a very good setup. You're going long right into the highs there. And of course, when we get up into this, I do like this one just because it came back to the trend line, the EMA. We are going sideways, but you can clearly see that we made that low right there. We tested it once, twice. It bounces off the trend line. That's a fairly nice move right there, or fairly nice setup. You got plenty of room back to the highs. It doesn't matter, it goes even higher, but you got enough room there. And of course, it sells off instantly, and you get two legs down. Unfortunately, you don't get a very good setup here. If you had a good setup here on this second entry, you might take that trade, but it's not a very good setup on my chart. And we keep just kind of chopping. We're making higher lows here, but we're not really going higher. We're finding that resistance. So this is a little iffy. The reason I like this trade is because we finally made that new high, and then we tested it once, we tested it twice. That's 3 times to go higher. Nice bearish bar. I like going short there. And you'd figure prices are at least going to come back down to test these lows, but it just keeps going. That's a good sign when it runs off down like that. Comes back to the EMA. There's a lower high here, but I think you need to wait on a second entry short. We've moved a little bit far to consider that a lower high, in my opinion, and you just don't get a second entry. And then you come back here, and you could almost say, hey, that's a failure, but it's really congested. But we do make a new swing high right there. And then you make a first entry, second entry, and that's right at the trend line, right at the EMA. And so I like that one. You can see they trapped the longs there. That's a nice move down. And you had to assume that we were probably coming back to test this first. And you can see we tested it, bounced, came below it, then pulled back and tested it again. Unfortunately, you don't get any real. That's just a first entry right there. I think that's a little dangerous to enter that. If you draw your little micro channel, you can see there's no real break, and you retest. I guess it does have a close and a retest all in one bar, but I'd wait on a second entry, and you just don't get it. We continue moving down. Then you get a first entry, second entry, but look at that signal bar. Let me zoom in a little bit. I'm so far out here. It's just too bullish. And you can't enter on this one. You're too late there. You do try to go higher once, twice. So there's a failure there, but that's kind of like in no man's land. We're not down to the lows. We're not back to the highs. It probably means a break's coming soon. We actually already have a break and a new low too, so that's another reason. And then it looks like maybe we're going to reverse, and it just never happens here. And unfortunately, this is a third entry. If this would have been a second entry, you might take that trade. But notice first entry, second entry, third entry. So just wait, and a few minutes later you get this little failed break higher off of these lows right here, or off these highs, I'm sorry. Where is that bar? There it is. And you can see those highs right there. And that's a little failed break higher, and it turns down instantly. That's usually a good sign of a trap. I like going short there. I like going short below right here, but if you wait to here, you're a little bit late, so I don't know if you really want to do that. It still works, but I think you're a little late there. There's a failed second entry long here, but again, it doesn't set up like a failure. It doesn't get back to the EMA, so really not a very good setup. We come back again to the EMA here, but you just get a first entry. This thing's really looking weak now, and so now start looking, and I think we can take this yellow one off here, and there's actually a short-term trend line right in here, and then you get your break and new low. So just be aware of that, because somebody will probably ask me about that too. Remember, the market is layered, so you'll get trends within trends, ranges. Here's a range right here within the trend, but we've really just started a new trend here. Looks like it's just going to be a temporary one. Then you get a first entry, second entry, and really a double top there. I like going short there. There's a additional attempt to go higher here that fails and gives you that big bearish bar, and that really confirms that trend line. That trend line needs to be a little bit lower there. And this thing's off to the races here, so I like that trade. There's a little bit of support here, but this thing is fairly strongly down. And I showed you the bigger channel too. Um, you don't want to be entering down here. I think there's a little, I mean, this is kind of just sideways, and you're not back to the EMA, you're not back to the trend line. Just not a good place to enter. You can see that there. Stay out of those little those little congestion sideways areas, unless you get some kind of trap or something. You don't get that there. You do get a breakout pullback short here, but again, it's not at a good location. And then finally we bottom out here. We spike up and go into this channel, but we quickly get a break and a new high, and that's a second entry short. So I like that trade. If you wait, there's a lower high here. I mean, we're probably going to retest this low here. So, and then there's a failure here, which again, you have to go short right here, but your stop goes up there. And I really thought this would run on down. It doesn't, but all of those trades would have worked. They set up nicely. They're typical what you'd be looking for in a downtrend. And of course we bounce, make a higher low and make another leg up, and then we're trending up, but I don't think you want to go long yet. It's getting late in the day. But you finally get a close outside, new high. You try to go higher once, twice. It's like a repeat from way back up here. Looks similar to that. And so it's late in the day. I marked it green, but I like that trade. There's plenty of room back to the EMA. It's like I said, it's a repeat type of setup, and it would have been a nice trade actually. So, and then that pretty much got us into 230. So the market is starting to correct some. We were way overbought, so no surprise. It's just you never know when it's coming. We were looking at that daily chart. Let's just look at it real quickly, and then we'll wrap. Okay, here it is, and you can see this spike in channel, and we did bounce right off that trend line, and now after hours we're kind of still trending down there after that bounce off the lows. So will this channel continue to hold and we go higher? You can see we definitely came off of that overbought situation, and now we're down into the green. I would like to see it come back to the midline at least before going higher, but if this spike up in channel is going to hold, we could continue to go higher from here, and we could just kind of meander along on a couple of inside bars and continue to work off that overbought condition. But we'll have to see. So this has been a heck of a rally, I know that, and I wouldn't be ready to call a bottom yet or a top, so we'll just have to kind of follow along and let the price action show us. But you know, really, if this channel was going to be correct, we had to figure we were going to pull back eventually and test this trend line again. Now, will this trend line hold and we go higher? That's yet to be seen. But there's no setups here on the daily chart, but obviously we bounced off that trend line, so we could continue to go higher. We'll see what it brings. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again tomorrow and wrap up our week. Believe it or not, another one's almost over. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.